Welcome to On the Middle East, Al Monitor's weekly podcast on the big stories shaping the region. My name is Amran Zaman, and I'll be looking at the December 23rd murders of 3 ethnic Kurdish activists in Paris. Police have blamed the attack on a 69-year-old Frenchman with a criminal record and a history of hostility towards foreign migrants. But the Kurdish community is pointing fingers at the Turkish state. A decade ago, 3 prominent Kurdish women activists were murdered in Paris by a Turkish man who was later established to have ties to Turkey's national intelligence agency known as MIT. Over the past decade, MIT has grown in power, becoming a central pillar in the government of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. MIT is a lethal tool in covert operations across Europe and the Middle East. With us here today to discuss this oversized role is Guillaume Perrier, co-author of a recent book on MIT's long arm in Europe called Les loups aiment la brume, or The Wolves Like the Mist. Turkey's ultra-nationalists, who historically have been influential in the security services, often refer to themselves as grey wolves, the mythical she-wolf from the Central Asian steppes, which the Turkish race supposedly sprung from. So welcome to our show, Guillaume. It's wonderful to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Marin.
So you cut your holiday short to return to Paris to cover this mysterious affair. What is the latest, Guillaume?
We are still waiting for more elements, to be honest, because the judge formally opened a court case on Monday morning. So we are just 3 days after the opening of this case. At the moment, not so much information came out from the prosecutors and judges, and French authorities seem to be a little bit uncomfortable with the situation. And after 2 days of mediatization of the case, French news channels have already shifted to other news, and to be honest, we don't talk anymore about the case. So the last information we had, the official version of the last Friday's attack, is that the attacker was a 69-year-old retired train driver. He was presented like a lone wolf, racist guy without any political connection to any group or any ideology, which is a bit surprising. But at the same time, he explained things that don't fit much with the official version. For example, he seemed to have an idea about the Kurds. He wanted to target Kurds, apparently, and he said to the prosecutor that he was angry at Kurds because they didn't fight enough against ISIS. So it looks like a strange justification of a racist lone wolf attacker who is supposed to be motivated by racism.
Well, it's very bizarre, particularly since that accusation is more often leveled against Turkey rather than the Kurds. We all know that, in fact, the Kurds were at the forefront of that campaign against the Islamic State, played a pivotal role in helping defeat the caliphate as a sort of territory. So it is, as you say, very peculiar, and we all know that the Kurdish community absolutely does not see this as a lone wolf attack. Can you tell us why?
Of course, they don't buy the official version, and they have good reasons for that, to be honest, because of the case of Sakine Janses and 3 Kurdish activists who were murdered 10 years ago. 9th of January, so 2 weeks later, it will be the 10th anniversary of that murder. And that murder is still unsolved, even if the hand of Turkish secret services appeared quite clearly in the investigation. So there is today no doubt anymore about the fact that 10 years ago, it was an operation from Turkish secret services. They used Ömer Güney, who was a young nationalist, militant, a Turkish guy living in Germany with his family, emigrating to France, who presented himself like a young Kurd who wanted to go back to his roots. It appeared that he was manipulated by the Turkish secret services, and 10 years later, the investigation is still going on, and it's
and
not.
He actually died in prison, right? And it's
He
still
died
unclear how he died, really. Nobody believed the story, right, that it was of natural causes.
No, for sure it's true. He had a brain tumor before being missioned by the MIT to commit his murder. So it was pretty clear that he would die in prison. I mean, and most probably he was chosen because he had a brain tumor and he had a limited time to live.
Oh, really? I missed that.
This was the plan.
Aha. Well, in this case, they picked perhaps again somebody who was mentally unstable, so created some plausible deniability, right? But we have no proof of that. And as you say, the French authorities are certainly not treating it in the same way, are they? And why is that so? Are there any political reasons for that, in your view?
Yes. So as you said, there is absolutely no single element, no single clue that could connect last Friday's attack to Turkish secret services. So that's why Turkish government pretends to be angry at the reaction in France, because they feel like it's a fake accusation. And to be honest, there is no element to connect Turkey to the crime. It could also be, and Kurdish community says that it could be the sign of a successful operation if you cannot connect it to the Turkish secret services.
Unlike the last time.
Got their target. This is what they think, but we are more talking about beliefs than facts, to be honest. But you cannot say to Kurdish community that it's not possible that Turkish secret services is behind, because this is what happened 10 years ago. And until now, to be honest, French state is covering up the case to keep good relations with Turkish government, not to inflame relations that are already tense between Macron and Erdogan. So business as usual. Kurds are in the middle of realpolitik relations.
Well, I mean, going back to 10 years ago, why that happened, you know, there are several theories about why those women were murdered. One was that it was an effort on the part of a section of the deep state to derail the Kurdish peace process. Another theory was that it was meant to intimidate the Kurds during those talks, an effort to show them what Turkey could do if they didn't play along. I'm not sure which of those theories you believe, or if you believe any of them, but in any case, it's an interesting time, right? Because we're facing elections. Erdogan needs the Kurdish vote if he's to win. Anyone who wants to win needs the Kurdish vote. Could we be in a similar situation where perhaps this is again some kind of message to the Kurdish political leadership of the consequences they might face if they're not cooperative, and in particular Abdullah Öcalan? What do you think?
I try not to believe in theories, you know. I try to
We've lived in Turkey all these years. How can we not?
Yeah, but theories are theories. I try to be facts. Yes, there are similarities between 10 years ago and today. We live a very political moment in Turkey, as you explained, where Kurdish vote is the target of political strategies, because obviously anyone who wants to defeat Erdogan in next elections needs to secure the most Kurdish votes possible. So there is something, and we saw reactions from Turkey. It was very interesting. Ali Babacan sent a message of condolence, and then Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu had to react also. So we see that, you know, this table of 6 people, they are not all on the same line on the Kurdish issue. So there could be a game there too, but this is an interpretation. I want just to remain focused on facts, and the way 2013 was a way to derail the peace process, because this is what it is. Our investigation in our book, as you know, we had the chance to interview Feyyaz Öztürk, who
yes, a fascinating figure.
Yeah, he introduced himself as a former MIT agent, a defector, let's say, who was commissioned by a group inside the MIT in 2017 to harass Gülenists, to build a fake accusation against Osman Kavala also. And in the end, he was sent to Vienna to attack and kill or injure Berivan Aslan, who is a famous Austrian politician from Kurdish origin. Feyyaz Öztürk told that also had a lot of information about 2013 case. He helped us to understand who was the group who commanded the operation. And it appeared that it was a cell inside the MIT, a group of people from Samsun, from the Black Sea, who were very important people in the Grey Wolves organigram. Two of them actually were brothers, and one of them was the former head of Ülkü Ocakları. Those 2 brothers used to be bodyguards for Alparslan Türkeş, okay, in the 90s.
But hang on, Guillaume, we are throwing a lot of names at the audience here. Alparslan Türkeş was leader of Turkey's far-right National Action Party, which is now allied with Erdogan. The Grey Wolves are its youth branch, which was involved in violence against left-wingers, but against other groups, including Kurds, Armenians. And the Ülkü Ocakları are the local clubs, if you will, where these Grey Wolves congregate and organize.
So this group, according to Feyyaz Öztürk, was behind 2013 attack and behind the recruitment of Ömer Güney. He was recruited at a cafe in Ankara near Kocatepe Mosque. That was the headquarters of that group and of Grey Wolves in Ankara. So according to this source, again, we have to be cautious with sources in Turkey, but according to this source, he gave many details, many information about the connections between those people. According to this source, this group was at the origin of the 2013 attack, and it was coming from inside the state, but from an extreme radical group inside the state. In 2013, MHP, the Grey Wolves, were not yet allied to Erdogan, right? So they were not so pleased with the peace process going on. And we know that at that time they were really angry. They put pressure on Erdogan for that. And we can think that a part of the Turkish state resisted again.
So this is the first theory. It chimes with the first theory rather than the one of trying to intimidate, to bully.
Yeah. But both are
possible. Absolutely. But we can also, I mean, remind people, our audience, of the fact that the Turkish military was also extremely opposed to this peace opening, as was Fethullah Gülen. And I
Exactly.
heard this with my own ears because in 2013, the Gülenists were taking groups of journalists to meet with him. And that was more about laying the ground, for this big corruption investigation that was going to be revealed, and sort of, I guess, trying to rally the media around them. And during that meeting with Gülen, I had the impression that I was speaking to the chief of Turkish General Staff when I heard the way in which he was, maligning the peace process, calling it a threat to Turkey's national security and all of that. So there were many forces arrayed against this peace process.
You are right. You are right. There were many forces against this peace process, and this is why Erdogan also have always said, after 2015, he said that Gülenists were behind it, if you remember. So.
Well, that's the safe way of dealing with it. I mean, just blaming them alone. I mean, surely they were involved, but he's trying to keep his relationship with the military on an even keel, because clearly he was very spooked by that attempted coup that was obviously not just Gülenist, but contained other elements in the army, I'm guessing. I mean,
indeed.
But to get back to the broader issue of all this sort of activity, overseas activity of the MIT, and the way in which MIT has evolved, and particularly after the coup, and become one of the main pillars of this regime, as you described it, that's really quite astonishing in a way, isn't it? The latitude that MIT's been given. Can we talk a little bit about that and tie it in with, your book and this guy Öztürk and what he described about those activities and his assignment in Austria that you touched upon earlier, and how that illustrates this sort of power of MIT and this license it's been given?
The Vienna story was to us a unique opportunity to see in details these networks that we were talking about since years, but without having much elements to describe them, to portray them. So it was a really unique opportunity. So I started investigating, and investigating means also having judicial sources in those countries, starting to get political reports in countries like Austria, Germany, Sweden. The state transparency is a good, very interesting tool for journalists, because we have access to some documents that we cannot have access to in France, for example, but like secret services reports, yearly reports, which says a lot about the activities of Turkish secret services. For example, they counted 22 cases of spying in 2020 and 2021. In 2 years in Germany, you had 22 cases opened by prosecutors for spying against MIT activities. This is fact. Doesn't mean all 22 cases will finish in front of courts, of course. But
were these directed at the Turkish Kurdish diaspora communities, mainly, these spying activities?
Mainly, but it could be other nationals. And Feyyaz Öztürk told me also that don't think that all Turkish MIT agents are Turks. We have people from New Zealand, Uruguay, or from Norway. And this is a good remark that can echo to last week's Paris attacks also, because MIT is able to recruit and to use any foreigner, any national for his own activities. And I got names from Europeans who cooperated with MIT in Europe also. So don't be surprised if it's an international network.
As you point out in the book, MIT has evolved into this sprawling network with brand new facilities, a huge budget, and greater license than ever before. To what extent do you believe Hakan Fidan, the head of MIT, has shaped the new face of this seemingly omnipotent organization?
He is obviously the black box, as Erdogan said. He's the guard of his secrets. So he is the guy who made what MIT is today. He's at the head of MIT since more than 12 years. Nobody had the opportunity to stay so long as a director of MIT. Yes, he is.
And he's unique in that he's neither a former military guy nor a former diplomat or bureaucrat, which is who MIT directors were till he came along, correct?
Yeah,
a very different kind of background, and he's a Kurd, right, from Van.
He's a Kurd from Van, exactly.
So who is Hakan Fidan exactly? Does he have a particular ideology or none at all? What does he stand for?
It's hard to say, but he's the close guy of Erdogan, and he made MIT a kind of personal guard of Erdogan. MIT used to be an institution in Turkey, and what Feyyaz Öztürk and many sources told me that MIT doesn't act anymore as a state institution of Turkey, but a personal guard for the president and his close collaborators. So it became more personal interest than state institution again. And this is why we have this kind of mafia-style connections with people who are not really agents. This is what Feyyaz Öztürk is angry at, and he denounced that MIT is evolving to a mafia-like organization more than a state institution, and he wants MIT to be back to reasonable strategies, conducting state security-oriented policies and not mafia-like fake accusations.
So what would be an example of a mafia-like operation that MIT conducted according to Feyyaz Öztürk?
The example, he says that he was commissioned by a group inside the MIT to kill Berri Van Aslan. Says that...
But that's nothing new, is it? I mean, Asala targets were on MIT's hit list
also
in the 80s. So it's not like the Turkish state hasn't been targeting people on foreign soil before.
No, this is true, but he says that these groups are not acting like he used to do before, you know.
So they did it better in a more legal way.
It can be a justification, but he notes that there are changes of methods inside the institution, that people are not trained and educated like they used to be before. The same critics happen inside Turkish army or Turkish police. We should see the larger picture. The whole security institution have been taken back by Erdogan's guys, and mostly far-right nationalists, grey wolves. And this is true for the diaspora in Europe also. So when you look at the MIT networks in Europe, they use the diaspora organizations. Can be religious, it can be political organization or social activities also. This is how they use, and they have the chance to benefit from thousands of elements in Europe. In Germany only, this is in the public report of German services, the MIT has 6,000 informants in Germany only. So this is huge. No foreign agencies has such a work power in Europe, to be honest.
But the really new elements is this this fleet of drones they have, and that they use to assassinate mainly Kurdish targets. MIT did not have that in the past. They were not in possession of drones.
Military equipment, yes.
And that's very interesting in terms of how that plays with the Turkish military. Does it cause tension? Does the military feel that part of its own authority has been ceded to MIT? Does it feel like it's not kept, fully informed of what MIT does when it comes to these attacks against Kurdish targets? I mean, what has been the impact of that, aside from the fact that a lot of people are getting killed, including civilians, women and children, as we've seen in Syria and in Iraqi Kurdistan?
Yeah, especially in Syria, northern Syria, we had more than 70 drone attacks in 2022. So it's huge. It's really huge. As they say, targeted assassinations became really frequent. And MIT is behind all of them, mostly.
It says so. It's
yeah.
public.
Yeah. So we see that, as you said, Turkish army doesn't have the monopoly of military violence, military operations anymore. And this could be a source of tensions between MIT and the army, of course. But I don't think it is anymore today, because we see that Minister of Defense is accepted the way Turkish Erdogan reorganized the security apparatus. So I don't think there is no more tension around that. We see that Ministry of Defense was in Moscow yesterday to meet the head of Syrian security services. Ankara is okay with this policy now, but we should understand that MIT is leading these foreign policy military operations against the Kurds more than Turkish army. And this is true also for the organization of SNA, Syrian National Army, which is a group of post-jihadis militia, Islamist militia, organized by Sadat. Sadat is a paramilitary group close to Erdogan, and MIT is directing the training, and MIT is organizing the relations between Turkish forces and this SNA.
It's not just Kurdish activists or Kurdish militants that MIT is targeting, but journalists and others as well. In Europe, we see especially journalists affiliated with the Gulen movement being physically attacked in places like Germany and Sweden, and they clearly believe that those attacks were instigated by MIT. And we've also had the illegal renditions of Gulenis, who were basically kidnapped overseas and brought home, held in black sites, tortured. So that's happening as well.
Yes, there are many cases. As you know, last year, a list of 55 people circulated also. They were journalists, Kurdish activists, Gulenists. Sweden is an interesting case because, as you know, Sweden is a candidate for NATO, and Turkey is putting the pressure on Swedish government to send back some of those journalists or activists. Some of them got political asylum in Sweden. And what is interesting is that Turkish pressure put on Swedish government forces the change of laws, like the tradition of asylum that we have in Sweden. It starts to change, and it's really interesting. It's under Turkish pressure that they started to change, and they sent back in the beginning of December. They sent back Mahmoud Tat, who was a political refugee, a Kurdish militant from PKK, and he was sent back to Turkey and probably now in prison. So there are results, and Turkey is quite successful with this policy, and it could be seen. More violent attacks could be seen as another way to put the pressure on European countries.
But they also use the Turkish media to intimidate journalists. You know, some of us have been actual victims, targets of that. So they operate at various levels, with various intensity, and it can be lethal. It can be just to scare you. But overall, we can safely say that Turkey's National Intelligence Organization is a power unto itself, reporting directly to Erdogan and with really very little, if any, accountability to anybody else.
Exactly. And they probably have correspondence in all mainstream Turkish media. We saw recently a reporter from Sabah Daily, a team from them spent weeks in Sweden to document the places where people were living, following them, and they published headlines and captured photograph of those people in the Turkish press. So they act like agents more than journalists, to be honest.
A very sad state of affairs. Well, thank you so very, very much, Guillaume, for this fascinating conversation, and also congratulations again on that magnificent book that you and Laure Marchand co-authored about the grey wolves and Turkey's national intelligence operations overseas. And we really hope that it will be translated into English very soon.
We hope so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and Happy New Year. And this brings us to the end of this week's episode of On the Middle East. I hope you found my conversation with Guillaume to be interesting, and that you'll tune in again next week for another interesting episode of On the Middle East. I'm wishing you all a fantastic new year. Stay safe and speak to you soon.